Good morning, my name's Chris Oughton, Director of Kwinana Industries Council, and it was a pleasure to be invited to address you here today. My subject is around industrial symbiosis, a subject which many of you will be familiar with, I'm sure. I'm going to redefine industrial symbiosis away from the world view and give you the Chris Oughton view and apply it to the Western Trade Coast, the major industrial area located about 40 kilometres south of Perth CBD. You'll get some practical examples of industrial symbiosis and how it works, and I trust you'll find my new definition particularly useful in your future project locational decision making. Industrial symbiosis, byproduct exchanges, right? Well, that's only about 20% of the story. I'm going to talk to you about the 4 dimensions of industrial symbiosis and why it should be important to you as a potential new entrant to the Western Trade Coast, to understand how knowing about this can help you in your locational decision making process. KIC is an industry association operating in the same way as a Chamber of Commerce and incorporated in 1991. We're geographically focused entirely on the Western Trade Coast, and it is from within that industrial region that we draw our membership. We have 14 full member companies, and many of their names you would recognise, and around 20 associate members. We are 100% funded by the members and them alone. KIC is regarded as one of the major voices of industry and has earned a well-deserved reputation for respectful and honest industrial advocacy. There are 4 main industrial suburbs that make up the Western Trade Coast. In orange is the Australian Marine Complex, or AMC. This area focuses on shipbuilding and maintenance, defence industries and specialist resource fabrication and deep sea engineering, subsea engineering. In yellow is the original heavy industrial core, otherwise known as the Kwinana industrial area. It's just about full, and we will be host to the 2 lithium hydroxide production facilities when they become operational, these being Tianchi and Covalent. The Rockingham Industry Zone in light green is a mixture of heavy and general industry zones with a significant amount of industrial development associated with the lithium value chain set to emerge over the next few years, including cobalt and nickel sulfate, high purity alumina, graphite and manganese sulfate battery chemical production facilities. Latitude 32 is in purple. It's largely undeveloped and is likely to become the place where an expansion of the heavy and general industrial core will occur. There is room to grow. The Western Trade Coast is officially recognised as the state's premier industrial area. Some statistics to set the scene. There are around 30,000 workers who attribute their employment to the Western Trade Coast, and 65% of them live within 15 kilometres of their place of employment. This means that the communities that surround the industrial area get industry, and this level of acceptance is important to the sustainability of an industrial area. The economic contribution of the Western Trade Coast is around 16.5 billion into the state economy annually, and that's in Australian dollars from 2013. There is room to grow, with around 2/3 of the whole area yet to be developed and built out. It seems increasingly likely that the state government will proceed with the development of a new port in Kwinana. And if it does, it will be a major attractor to the new port-related industrial development, and that, along with the new lithium value chain industries that are coming, will see the remaining available land being snapped up and increased pressure to bring more land to market. So what's my role in all of this? Well, my job can be summarised as being focused on resolving issues that are of collegiate interest to KIC's members. And the by far and away most significant one of these is preservation of the industrial buffer zone from the profit interests of residential property developers. And finally, the Kwinana industrial area, the old core, is literally one of the best examples in the world of industrial symbiosis at work, with over 150 exchanges occurring on commercial terms and on a continual basis. But more on that soon. We all know that industrial symbiosis is not new, and there are lots of academic papers that have been written on it. I'm showing in this slide a good example of the broadly accepted version of what is the world's understanding of industrial symbiosis. I won't read it all, you can do that yourselves, but it is a definition that is complicated but certainly all-encompassing. It's how the academics tend to define industrial symbiosis. Fair enough. In a nutshell, what they're saying is that the industrial symbiosis is about product and byproduct exchanges carried out on commercial terms. A much simpler way of saying it, I think. So let's delve into this. It is the schematic of the exchanges within the Kwinana industrial area as they were in 2013. This is the most recent version we have. What's going on in Kwinana is one of the world's best practice examples of industrial symbiosis in action. The schematic shows there were around 150 exchanges formally occurring between Kwinana industries, and all are on commercial terms. So how did this extensive web of exchanges come about? The answer is that it evolved. It was organic. Company to company, industry folk engaged in conversations, many of which were facilitated by KIC through our board and committee meetings, and prompted by the drive to lower cost bases and increase competitive ability. This organic process of development is in contrast to, for example, what happens in the major Danish industrial area, Kalundborg, whose synergy development is government facilitated and promoted, and which has a much smaller number of exchanges. Industrial symbiosis in the KIA has evolved and grown in its extent for over 50 years. The report shown in this slide, the Western Trade Coast Integrated Assessment 2014, provides a great account of the strategic importance of the industrial cluster to the state, and explains a great many other aspects of the industrial area too. The report even tracks the growth of the synergies over the past 25 years in a series of 4 reports over that time. Yes, this report is number 4 in the chronological series of reports, each documenting the extent of the synergy exchanges at that time, and we'll take a quick look at them. In 1990, there were 17 companies participating, less than 30 exchanges. Got to start somewhere. Then in 2002, you can see the industrial cluster gained momentum. There was exponential growth in the number of exchanges. Companies were actively seeking out exchanges for mutual financial and competitive benefit. They saw the benefits of being in amongst the industrial cluster. And notice how there are a small number of companies with a prominent role in the whole ecology. So now to 2007, where there were 29 companies. The web gets still more complex, and the same prominent players increase the number of their exchanges. They're responding to the opportunities for improving their competitive positions within the maturing cluster more and more over time. In 2013, there are now 33 companies, and that was 7 years ago. Remember, this has been an organic expansion over time, with the number of exchanges continuing to increase. And remember, these come about through company-to-company discussions, many of which culminated in contractual product exchange relationships. The role of the KIC in all of this was firstly to bring the parties together via our board meetings, and secondly, through what was then our specialist committee called the Eco-Efficiency Committee. I stress that there was no government involvement in the development of all of this, aside from locating the heavy industries in the KIA, beginning nearly 60 years ago. Symbiosis was not mandated for industry, and nor was it government incentivised. It is my considered view that this self-generated organic symbiotic growth is a better approach than an artificial one like, for example, government intervention. What the government of the day did, though, and full credit for this outcome, was to establish the industrial area and in such a way that the cluster could grow. This was good work. There are several new exchanges that have occurred in recent years, and most, not all, of them are linked to the participating companies that will make up the new energy metals industry coming to the industrial area. Recall that earlier I said I considered the world's view of industrial symbiosis as limited. Here's what I mean. I actually think that the view is like a one-legged chair, but it's not the full story. I see that there are 3 other legs to this chair. When all 4 legs are present at an industrial cluster, it is very strong. It creates a truly symbiotic industrial ecology. The official definitions focus on the reuse of materials, mainly processed byproducts. In this next slide, we'll take a look at what makes up the other three legs. I call them the four dimensions of industrial symbiosis. Here they are, the four synergy dimensions: the product and byproduct synergy dimension, the skilled workforce synergy dimension, the secondary industry synergy dimension, and finally the governance synergy dimension. And I'll explain these now. The four legs of industrial symbiosis are firstly, as per the formal definition I gave you earlier, about the exchange of products, byproducts and utilities. Logically, this is extended to include input products and industrial chemicals like sulfuric acid or caustic soda that are made within the cluster for use in the many industrial processes. I'll also include the reuse of byproducts as inputs for other chemical processes, and utility exchanges like steam to make it all-encompassing. Products, byproducts and utilities. These are the commercially based exchanges that appear in the schematics you saw earlier. This dimension of industrial symbiosis is very, very strong in Kwinana, world class. They present a strong attraction for prospective new entrant industries. The skilled workforce synergy dimension is a reference to the human resource pool. It relates to the 30,000 highly skilled and experienced workers that are directly and indirectly employed within the Western Trade Coast, 2/3 of whom live within 15 kilometres of their place of work. This means the industrial area is surrounded by residential communities that have a deep affinity with industry, and this is an important side benefit of this synergy dimension. These workers choose to work in the Western Trade Coast rather than away in the regions via fly-in, fly-out arrangements. They don't want to uproot their families to move to the other regions to live. They get to sleep in their own beds when they're off their shift. They value these characteristics. What many are in fact happy to do is to move between companies within the industrial area, advancing their experience base and taking promotions. They don't want to move away from the area to chase the relative uncertainty of new jobs. Their lives are settled close to where they work and they want it to stay that way. So what's the value of this? Well, when a new company builds its plant in Kwinana, it can attract skilled and experienced workers from within the local area. The new company starts up with a pool of local experienced employees, trades to management, scientists to engineers, safety and environmental professionals, process operators to procurement and stores. The synergy dimension is very strong in Kwinana. Now the third synergy dimension is what I call the secondary industry belt. Surrounding the Kwinana industrial area is a belt of companies that exist primarily to service the nearby major industries located in the heavy core. These businesses are the expert fabricators, constructors and engineering workshops, plant hire and labour suppliers and equipment maintainers. There's a strong financial advantage for these secondary industries being located close by to their big industry customers. Big industry has a strategic advantage in having the secondary industries located close by. These secondary industries deliver top quality local content products and services. They have a local reputation to uphold and their reputation for service and quality is in their long-term interests. This synergy dimension is very strong in Kwinana. The system of government here in Australia has three levels: federal, state and local. Each level has a different purpose, but all are a little intermingled to some extent, and this is what makes up the governance synergy dimension. In essence, the roles are to provide strategic industry leadership through policy settings, deliver or facilitate the delivery of strategic public infrastructure, regulate efficiently and sensibly, and to carry out national and international business development work to broadly promote the area to new entrants. It is clear there is a great deal of work to do to achieve a sound level of good governance for the Western Trade Coast. First, let's look at federal government governance and its level of stability. I'm talking about national leadership, and in this context, policy leadership in the new energy metal space. The federal government has written the National Lithium Industry Report, so there's policy leadership. Of course, we could take this to the next level where the report's implementation is facilitated maybe via a free trade zone or special economic zone for the Western Trade Coast, but we won't at this point. The achievement of this would be a worthy goal in the federal governance space. I rate this federal aspect of the governance synergy as reasonable. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next level of the governance hierarchy, Western Australia and state governance. Do we have policy leadership here? Yes, we do. The State Lithium Industry Report sets the scene for the development of this industry. We can make criticisms of the implementation of the report's recommendation by the departments and the lack of emphasis and resourcing the state places on getting out and marketing to the world about the attractiveness of the Western Trade Coast to the world's players in the lithium industry. We could do this quite easily, and actually I do. But I believe that state governance could be a lot less helpful than it is, so actually that's a reasonably good rating in a strange sort of way. Service and pipeline corridor governance rates very poorly, and we all know about coordination issues across relevant departments, about planning timeframes and processes, about unnecessary red tape, about the lack of a strategic plan for the development of the Western Trade Coast, and about various other aspects. These are state governance issues, and state departments could be working a lot better in these areas together. I rate this level of governance as needs work, but it's a good thing that the state does have its lithium industry report. It should be easier than it is though. Local government stability is the next layer. We have to deal with 3 local governments with governance responsibility for the Western Trade Coast. One of the 3 of these understands the needs of industries, and 2 seem to not. I see 3 different corporate cultures, 3 sets of planning policies, officer preferences and political dispositions towards industry. Again, I rate this as it should be easier than it currently is. So, the governance synergy, the public governance of industry, needs firstly to be about clear long-term national or state policy leadership, and secondly, to be about the facilitation of the common use infrastructure that industry needs for it to be able to effectively compete in international markets. Facilitation does not necessarily mean paying for. The private sector is ready, willing and able to invest in public-private partnerships. A big ask, but other countries do it pretty well, so it can't be that hard. One solution to simplify the governance dimension to make it more effective is to create a Western Trade Coast Development Board with responsibility for all of the above. My assessment of this synergy dimension is that it is the weak leg of the chair. The leg is strengthened, fortunately, by the collective influence the cluster's voice, the Kwinana Industry Council, has. One voice coming from the cluster, which employs 30,000 workers and contributes 16 billion into the state economy each year, can be a powerful voice when used within the governance synergy dimension. Now, I'd like to illustrate in a practical sense how the synergies come together. Hypothetically, let's take a new project coming to the KIA, locating itself in amongst the existing industrial companies. Maybe this could be your project. How does the 4-dimension model work in reality? So on this slide, let's look at your construction phase first. You've got your state and local approvals to go onto a suitable heavy industrial site which is serviced with pipeline corridors and roads. You have your local planning development application approved. The governance dimension has delivered the required approvals. Your materials, fabrication and project management is sourced from just over there in the general industrial area, from within the secondary industry support belt. Your fabrication and construction supplier has done it before and done it well. And because of this, you get your fabrication requirements met on time and within budget, with good quality Australian standard compliant materials used and kit. Any defects were sorted out with a phone call. Remember the importance of local reputation. This is the secondary industry synergy dimension and the skilled workforce dimension at work. Now to your operational phase. Your industrial production needs process materials for its inputs and it produces outputs. Your process input materials needed for the production are sourced from suppliers located up the road. so there are minimal transport costs to get these materials to your site. Synergy Dimension 1, product and byproduct. A power supply is available to you via a neighbouring source of renewable energy. So via the back fence, you get behind the meter priced energy. Nice. Dimension 1, utilities. You source a high proportion, if not all, of your workforce from within the industrial area, from existing companies located up, down and across the road. The skilled workforce synergy dimension. You've got processed byproducts to deal with. Are they destined to go to a landfill? If so, it'll probably have to be a class 4 one, and that will be a very costly arrangement, and none too good for the environment, nor for public perception for that matter. And this is becoming an increasingly important consideration. The product and byproduct synergy dimension again. Or maybe as an alternative to landfilling, the outfit down the road will pay you something for it because they can use it as an input material for their existing process, thus saving on their existing costs. Your processed byproduct now generates an income stream for your operation, and that's cream. Oh yes, and by the way, the company through the back fence, the one that is selling you the off-grid power, is supplying its own solid waste byproduct stream to the same company you're selling your byproduct to, the one down the road. Both streams are used in their process. But wait, there's more. It seems increasingly likely that in the not too distant future we're going to get a new container and bulk freight port in Kwinana. This means that if you're going to be exporting finished product in shipping containers or bulks in or out of the industrial area, the transport task will get a lot cheaper. The governance dimension. Wrap all of this up and it can be described as sheer poetry, wouldn't you say? Maybe you should say it's fanciful. Maybe you say it's fanciful. Well, it isn't. I've just given you a somewhat simplified but real life case example of the opportunities that are before any prospective new entrant company beginning to settle into the dimensions of industrial symbiosis in the heavy core of the Western Trade Coast industrial area. Not fantasy, reality, and rest assured there are many, many more examples. I know for a fact that many in the industrial world are looking at our synergy exchanges in Kwinana with great interest. We've been observing prolific downloading of the synergy schematic from our website. In the past 2 to 3 years, there have been literally dozens of company representatives who have taken the tour of the industrial area that I provide. All of this interest points to a fascination with the possibilities the first synergy dimension offers to their projects, and they get more interested when I speak about the other 3 dimensions. The Kwinana synergies are the reason why many lithium industry companies have chosen to locate their enterprises here, and why many are looking carefully at the spin-off opportunities they present. Now, what if there was a second and similar company planning to produce the same product as the one in the previous example, but looking at a regional location where the first 3 synergy dimensions are not present? There are probably no product and byproduct synergies present or possible. Likely there'll be a few, if any, locally based and skilled or experienced workers nearby, and probably very limited expert fabrication, construction or engineering expertise, if any. Well, with those characteristics, it sounds like a hard ask as a place to establish a new industry cluster to me. Whatever the regional production facility scenario is, its operation will be less competitive in the long term when compared to the company doing the same thing but located with the industrial cluster that exhibits strength across all 4 of the synergy dimensions. Consider how the higher operational cost base will stack up when the product's market enters its maturity phase, with the associated diminishing margins aligned with its inevitable product life cycle curve. The provision of tempting government subsidies and assistance packages are put on the table to drive industrial development into the regions. Now, we all understand the needs of the regions to diversify, to grow, but incentivising like this helps no one in the medium to long term. This is an unfortunate aspect of the 4th synergy, the governance dimension. Having said that, there may well be really good reasons to locate away from the major manufacturing hubs. If so, that's all well and good too. Remember the fourth and weakest synergy dimension, the governance dimension. It is within this synergy type that the regions can be assisted to focus efforts on identifying what it is that their region can become very good at, what they can specialise in. It is within the governance synergy dimension that the regions can be facilitated through a process that lands them on what industries they could attract to enable them to focus on their own particular area of specialisation. I believe this is what should be occurring, and then by all means offer incentives to get the new hub up and running. So now to summarise, I'll make a number of brief points. Industrial symbiosis in the Western Trade Coast is alive and well, ranks as one of the world's best practice examples of industrial symbiosis in action. A strong mix of the four dimensions of industrial symbiosis creates the opportunity for incoming companies to minimise their ongoing operating costs. So it's good for the bottom line, for shareholders and for the environment. It's also good for the businesses located around the new company. The bigger the industrial base in the core, in the cluster, the stronger is its secondary industry belt, the more robust is its workforce, the more will new industry be attracted to locate nearby, and the more likely it will be that the governance dimension will be more conducive. I don't see any downside to this. The stronger the core is, the greater is its ability to influence the governance synergy through business advocacy. Some will say that the regions miss out. What's better for a region? Hosting an industry that's going to struggle due to its higher cost of construction burden and higher operational costs, or the region that has identified what its competitive advantages are and works with the government for assistance to get that new specialist industry sector developing? My money is on the latter. Government, responsible for the fourth dimension of industrial symbiosis, has a role in removing infrastructure constraints and bottlenecks on the collective industrial cluster, whether this be by funding it themselves or by partnering with the private sector. Debottlenecking public sector infrastructure constraints to industry is good industrial governance and is good for the state's economy. This shouldn't be that hard. The advent of the new port in Kwinana will be the catalyst to deconstraining government infrastructure, whether through utilisation of public or private investment. And finally, many who have taken the tour of the industrial area I provide to companies looking to potentially locate their projects in the Western Trade Coast are seriously attracted to the synergy story. Some of you are here today, I see. On the basis of seeing is believing, tour recipients literally see the commercial benefits of all of the synergy dimensions that go to make up the industrial ecology that is responsible for putting the Western Trade Coast on the world stage. Well, delegates, that's it. Here are my contact details. If you want to take the tour, get in contact with me. It takes a couple of hours. I'll even tailor it to meet your informational needs. Thank you to the conference organisers for the opportunity to speak to the delegates on this subject, which is clearly dear to my heart. To delegates, please do enjoy your conference, and I'll be around today and this evening if you want to catch up. Thank you.